So thought I'd have a go with this this new camera that we got at college. So it's a GoPro Hero 7. So I thought I'd just come outside because weather's really nice, isn't it, for this time of year, and I can already tell that that nights are getting longer, which is great. I've been waiting for this, so I can start doing things to my van, and I can start making prep on Prius, and I can maybe wash me Matiz. There's going to be all sorts of little bits and bobs of maintenance on Matiz, essential maintenance on us Prius, but I'm going to be getting this little beast back ready for a summer doing track days. So there's lots of things that I've got planned, so such as plastic windows and chopping roof off and making a fiberglass panel that goes in top of it. So I'll be cutting it off here, getting rid of steel. Quite a lot of weight of steel, I would have thought, from high up, and then putting a thin sheet of fiberglass in there. I think it'd be a better idea to do that after I've got a roll cage in there, because we've already got structural integrity or a Tetley's tea bag at the minute, haven't we, to work from, sorry. So what I am going to be turning my attentions to is the suspension still. So I've done quite a bit of stuff to the front, and I'm going to be looking at doing a bit more to the back end, because I've actually done nothing to the back end other than weld diffo. So what I am going to be looking at doing is making some American style ladder bars. I don't know whether to use same mounting location as leaf spring, or whether to bring it forwards, maybe to like maybe halfway down length at side door, to get a little bit of length. But you know, I'm not going to have that much travel on back end of this van in terms of suspension, so yeah, it's not necessary to have really long ladder bars. Yeah, so we've got my front suspension, which I didn't really do a video of after I put my coilover sleeves on. So I put my coilover sleeves on, and I put my damper on there, but I didn't do a video after I made me drag link. So I've decided that over next month, maybe while we're in lockdown, that I'm gonna start making plans. I'm gonna start making plans to get this back track ready. So one of the things that I did have a problem with at Teesside is the fact that that van were tipping up on that uphill section just before it back straight. So there's a tight S-bend, and it was tipping up on two wheels. So I'm not necessarily going to be lowering it, but what I'm going to be looking at doing is widening track, and I've got some negative offset, the quite aggressive negative offset 5.5J Wellers. So I'm looking at getting them banded so that I can increase track. I'm going to look at maybe putting 4-inch overall on back end, so it'll be nice and wide. And then I want to look at maybe box arching back end. All my panels are going to be lightened. I'm going to have polycarbonate windows in panels, so all at van panels, back door, side window, all polycarbonate. And I'm also going to be tacking my doors in, or I might even put them in on bonnet pins, but I've bonnet pins on inside. but they're just going to be a skin. Yeah, they're not going to have any hinges, they're not going to have any sliders. All that's coming out because we're going to be reducing weight further that way. All my door cards on inside, so my door cards on inside, they're coming out. When I'm on a track day, my passenger seat will not be in as well. Can try and have a look through back window. It's a bit mucky. I don't know if you can see through window, but I have already chopped out the inside edges at back panels as well, where door cards mount onto, because it's just unnecessary. So all this sort of hardware for doors is coming off, it's going, and we're probably going to have a box arch on rear. One of the things that I was getting a bit of a problem with as well is the engine box inside was heating up, so I'm going to be venting just out at doors here. I'm going to be venting hot air out at top at engine compartment. Also, I'm going to be solid mounting engine. Back end's going to be rose jointed with them truck arms or ladder bars, whatever they call them, and it's going to be on coilovers. Probably I'm going to go down at back, ride height wise, maybe like 50mm, and maybe 25 at front, but no drastic. It's not going to be slammed on its backside. I don't like idea of that. Plus my engine, well, the engine on any Hijet is the bit that stops it from tipping over. That's the main bit of weight that's dangling below its suspension points, and that gives it quite a high roll centre. So the engine weight is what's counteracting the body roll. This is why Hijets don't tip over very easily. One of other vans, little sooty vans, type vans, mini vans, that does tip over quite regularly, as Hammond showed. It's the Suzuki Super Carry Bedford Rascal, and that's got spring underleaf at back, and the suspension anchoring points on front are a lot lower on inside, so inside edge of your bottom arms are quite high up on these, so you've got your engine dangling below that point, whereas on Super Carry and Rascal that point is quite low. It's so it does make it tip over quite easily. That's why Hammond did a Frosby flop in his. So all in all, my little project's back on go. It's going to be a budget build, obviously. I'm not going to sink more than £1,000 into it, I wouldn't have thought, by summer. Maybe even half that. So yeah, I'm going to look at getting wheels banded for my birthday, which is in February, and then I'll look at getting components to make me arms at back, and I think I'm going to go for a Watts link. Yeah, I'll let you guys bash that one out and tell me whether or not I'm wrong to go Watts link, or whether or not a panhard rod would be better, or maybe a diagonal cross brace in between my arms if there's enough room underneath me prop shaft. Right, thanks for listening. So I'm just on with coilovers on my van. I've had a few issues with other side. I did other side first so that I could figure out what I needed to do and how I needed to do it, and make all my mistakes on that side without you guys laughing at me. So yeah, I've managed to get one side done. and it seems to work all right now. But I did make a few balls ups, and yeah, I'm pretty certain I'm not going to make them balls ups again. So taking leg off these, one of the things I did come across was the fact that the flexi hose, this long hose here, going up round here, there's a clip that holds it in. Oh, it's at front. So this here, you got to take this clip out just here and knock it out that way, right? So when you take that clip off, the flexi hose are still in a hole. So in an ideal situation, you've got to undo it here, take this clip off, take that clip off, yeah, and then thread all that flexi hose, this flexi hose here, through this hole on leg and out. On the other side, I've done a modification. I've basically cut the end of that out so that I can take leg off without undoing brake system and having to bleed up this caliper again. So I think that's a bit of a crap design flaw, really. So first things I've got to do is take this retaining bolt out for the flexi pipe that holds it to bottom of leg, like that. Then while leg's still attached, it's much easier to get on with prizing that off. I use a pair of long nose pliers. I can't do it one-handed, so I'm gonna have to turn you off for a minute while I'm prizing that off. So you can prize that out, and then you'll be able to see what I mean about this this hole in back at leg. So this is that hole where that flexi pipe passes through. It's a right bollock of a job, really, if you were to take it all off from up there. And I ain't gonna do that. No way, no how. So I've removed that rusty. I've removed that rusty retaining clip. This thing here. Yeah, they can be a bit of a pain in the ass to get off, but they do come off. Now, as you can see, these two legs ride on this portion of the bracket. I don't think that focused properly. This portion of the bracket. So you can get away with chopping out the end of that little bracket, so that when you move the flexi outwards, you can then pull it to the side and through the bracket. When you put the retaining clip back on this, then it sits like that, and that shoves on that way, and these two legs here and here ride on that and that part, so it makes it easier for getting leg on and off. I mean, why didn't they do that to start with? I don't know. I'll probably find out. So now that I've got these two bolts out at bottom at leg, and as you can see, this can slide freely out. So next step is to flip seat up inside and get to strut top bolts and get them out. It should be pretty easy. It's not too much of an hard job. Once I've got the leg all free, I can get it into a position, get grinder out, and carefully cut that slot into that bracket there, like I mentioned earlier. So these are 3 bolts that you need to take out to drop leg out. The 12mm nuts. So you just take them 3 out. Hopefully on yours it's as good as mine, and it's all nice and free. Some vehicles might be a bit more stubborn to get off. Some could even shear off and leave you with a bit of a problem. However, the strut tops, it looks like a stud that's pressed in strut top, and you'll be able to knock that stud out, or even press it out if you've got access to a press. So yeah, that'll be easy enough to fix if you did come across a sheared off bolt. So now with leg off, I've got it laid down across bottom arm. Make sure your bottom arm don't swing down to the floor as well, because this flexi it'll get overstretched and you'll damage it. And last thing you want is to damage something like that, because I don't think they'll be easy to get older, even though you might be able to make something else fit. But getting on a real thing might be a bit of a pain in the ass from motor factors, so just be careful with that. Now I've got leg laid across bottom arm, and as you can see, it's giving me access to that bracket. So what I'm going to do is, with one hand I'm going to hold the flexi pipe down out at way of this part here, and then with other hand I'm going to carefully slice through that without going into my flexi pipe with grinder. And I'm going to make sure that I've got enough relief to get that flexi pipe through without causing an issue and having to squeeze pipe. So what we have is leg off, and you can see that I've cut that little relief here to be able to get something like that round pipe from out of here, like that, and through that slot. Well, that were a bit fat, but yeah, you get the idea. When you put that retaining clip, when you get that retaining clip and you put it back on, you can see the two legs are going to ride on what I've left, and they're going to hold the boss into that hole still. So it'll be fine. Yeah, don't worry about it. Yeah, don't worry. It'll work. Trust me. Now, next thing that we've got to do is, on this leg, is cut this cup off. Here's one I cut off earlier, and it's got only a couple of welds that hold it, actually attach the cup on. So you've got to go through that weld, then we flip it over, we're going to go through that weld. Once you've done that, it's pretty much a free-for-all and it'll come off. Right? At the other end, I've got the strut top. So I'm going to take this cap out. There's an 18mm bolt inside, and you've got to hold the strut top in vise. So holding the strut top in vise stops the shaft from rotating as easily. Trouble with that is the rubber in top mount can still actually rotate. So if you've got access to a windy gun or an impact gun, electric impact gun, it'll make your life so much easier. But if you haven't, get the strut top in vise, get your ratchet on there with your 18mm socket, put a bit of tension on it, and then get a good twat with hammer, and it should slacken it off. So, as you can see where I've got this placed and gripped, I don't think you can cuss at light. However, it's right up where bump stop will cover up the nasties from jaws at grips. It should be fine. Some people will be screaming, saying, "Oh no, that's not a good way to do it." Well, F off. If you haven't got access to an electric impact wrench or air to use a windy gun, sometimes this is the only way of doing it. So there you go. Another thing to note is that I didn't use a spring compressor at all to get the spring off. Now you would need it to put them on. I However, these springs are not going back on. We're having the shorter 8-inch coilover springs, the 300 pounders. So they're going on. But if you were to undo the strut top on these, because there's very little preload on these springs, there ain't really a reason to use spring compressors. However, other models of cars, I must stress to you, have immense amounts of preload on springs. I mean, a ridiculous amount. So if you just undid strut top off that bolt there, you would be in all sorts of problems. The spring would fly off. You damage threads on end at shocker. Yeah. Do not, with any other types of suspension units, just think, I'm just going to waz strut top off. You could possibly do it with weight on vehicle, and then use vehicle to compress spring if you want to be a rough ass. However, do not tackle a job on a different car spring without a spring compressor. These are quite a lightweight spring, and they haven't got any. They've hardly any preload on them. There's just enough to locate the spring in seat when it's stationary. When weight's off it, sorry, not stationary. When weight's off a vehicle. So when you jack it up, there's just enough to keep that spring in its seat. So yeah, you can get away with just wazzing nut off on these. So you can see there that I've cut through that spring cup. That spring cup looks like that when it's off. Right, so once you've cut through the two welds, it should be free. So you get little tappy stick and just get a knock, and it should come free. Look at this for left-handed hammering. Right, so yeah, that's going to come all the way up that shaft, up that tube there, and it's going to make its way past this. And that ain't going to happen, is it? Now, that thing there is just a seal retainer. So, just knock that off with screwdriver. You can just put a screwdriver up to ender it, get a bash with hammer, and that retainer comes off. And then this spring cup will come off at body, and then we'll look at sliding his coilover tube down onto it, and then tacking it on with weld. So I've loosened retainer. You just screwdriver it back at raise points, and then hit it, tap it off. So as you can see, there's points where it'll be raised. You can just get the screwdriver at the back of it. You don't even have to work your way around usually. You can just knock that retainer off. And what it does is, it secures right on top of the shocker, and it just stops that seal. Well, it gives it a little bit more security. Stops it from popping out. And you can get, if you wanted to be a proper mechanic, and you've got a seal leaking and shaft one ice like this is, you could find out what that seal was. You could find out what that seal was from I don't know, like a transmissions place. I would think somebody like Albion Transmissions in Barnsley, South Yorkshire, would be able to get me a seal that would fit this and cure leak. But thing is, there's nowhere to fill oil. So at some point I want some knackered shockers donated to me off somebody, and I'm going to look at drilling body, making a drain and a filling port, so that I can fill the shocker with some heavier fluid, just to experiment that way, and see if I can uprate the dampers on front, because they are a little bit underdamped, these Hijets. They're getting to a bit of a flap when you gain it. So I've cleaned up round the bottom shocker where spring perch was, and that's where the new sleeve's going to fit. So it's going to fit over the top of that. I'll just show you again with this cap, yeah, just to make sure that you know. These raised areas, you can get a screwdriver just up against back of it, and then just gently tap it off with screwdriver. This sits there like that, and then when you put it back on, you can either put a tube over the top of there, just to knock it down nice and gently, or you can tap it down evenly with hammer. Whichever way is good enough. It's just a seal retainer for that lip there. Right, so here's your coilover tube, and it just slides over the shocker like that. Sorry, the dampener, like that. And as you can see, it sits on an angle. So what I recommend you do is just line up the back edge like that, with there, and then tack it on this end first, and then square it up to where it needs to be. Only put a central tack just in there if you're doing it where I'm doing it. So when you put that central tack in, you can adjust it that way, and you can adjust it that way, yeah, so you can get it central. And how I do it is just look down the top of there, and you could be able to get it central like that. So it's quite baggy. Now another thing that you'll notice is that it's quite a bit longer than body on shocker. So what you got to do is you've got to cut it down to size. So how I did it with last one was where your retainer sits is like roughly that far down body. So I measured up to rusty mark by using this like that. I did it that way though, and then the retainer, I screwed the retainer down to height that I wanted to chop off. Then I put the bit in vise that I didn't want and cut it off with grinder, and then that made the tube the right length, so it didn't interfere with this retainer. Because in an ideal world, that retainer would have fitted over there nicely and it would have centralised everything. However, it don't, so we can't do it that way. So I've got a coilover sleeve welded to shocker tube now. Now, issues that I'm going to have is, sorry, not issues. So issues that you run into when you're trying to weld a shocker body is fact it's filled with oil. Now all the heat from your weld transfers into body with all that oil, and you don't get good penetration. This shocker tube's really thin. Now trying to weld to a thick shocker tube or even this bracket here, and then to a thin walled tube, it's extremely thin, because it not only has it got threads that cut into it, it's 1.5mm pitch, so the actual thickness of steel is very thin. So you're trying to get penetration on thick stuff, and thin stuff blows through. So you've got to be patient, and you've got to work from thick bit and then just dip into thin bit and just allow it to fuse together when you're welding that on. It's a bit difficult if you're a novice welder. However, you might be able to get hang of it and do it. As you can see, that thick bit of weld there I had some issues, so I had to fiddle about with settings on my welder and stuff. I ended up finding out that full whack what best, plenty of wire feed, and that wire feed cools puddle quick. So as you dip into thin metal with that pool that's forming, pool of molten metal that's forming, the wire feeding in cools that pool, and it stops it from blowing through. So that's my advice: is full whack, plenty of wire speed, and go at it like a bull in a china shop. So I've got tube on. It's slightly off centre. It might give me some issues with spring binding up. If it does, I'll cut it off and I'll start again. So this is it with spring sat on it. I've got retainer back in. That seal retainer. So that's in. And it's looking pretty cool. It does job. It lifts car up and down. Now, one thing to mention, I'm not lowering it. What I'm doing is I'm making it so that I can adjust spring rates, so that I can alter weight front end response to steering input. Now, if you wanted to lower it, I've got 8-inch springs here. However, if you want to lower it, you're gonna have to put 7-inch springs in, and then possibly have to alter the stroke on damper unit itself. I think you'd get away with maybe 40mm on front lowering. We are doing out to this, so you could go about 40mm lower, and in that case I would start with a 7-inch spring, standard damper, and your adjustable spring seat, and that'd work. These springs are £300 weight, so not cost. The weight of them are £300. Now they are incredibly stiff, but if you put them on vehicle with very little preload, the ride's not much different to what standard is. So my next step is to get a range of springs, so when I'm on track I can swap them out. Another thing is when you've got this set up, you can adjust them so that they've got some preload on them while you're putting them in. But when you want to remove them, you can slacken all preload off with weight off at vehicle. Slacken all preload off, drop your strut top down and pull shocker top out, and then just take your spring off without any spring clamps. So that's a massive benefit when you're at a track. You know, when you're on a track day, because you'll be able to swap them in and out in like 10-15 minutes rather than having to get them in vice and spring compressors like you would do. Because this is your standard spring, and you can see it's a lot taller. However, it doesn't sag as with the 8-inch spring. It only has maybe 1.5 inches of droop before it stops drooping. With these things, they're absolutely ridiculous. They've got so much droop that when you're cornering, that inside front wheel dangles right down to the floor. I've seen some videos of my van cornering, and it looks hilarious. It's a bit like a cartoon with wheels dangling right out at the bottom of the van. So here's how you do your spring retainer. If you haven't got a 20mm drill bit or a drill with a chuck big enough, use a bit of your coilover sleeve that you've chopped off to fit round body at right height, and use that bit that you chopped off, cut it down to approximately 25mm, and then you just put a nice 3 tacks on it just to hold it in place. It don't need seam welding all the way around. That'd be really excessive on this component. It's only locating top of the spring. All weight's going through that nut rather than spring sideways. It's really unnecessary to to seam weld that all the way around. So if you're wondering how you get around some issues, we're making a spring seat for the top. We are having a drill bit big enough to drill that 10mm oil out there. You do it that way, and it's bang on. It's bang on. It works perfectly. I've done it on the other side. It works great. I know the springs on top are a bit flat for that seat to work 100% correctly. However, it's fine. It locates the spring. It does exactly the job that it were meant to do when it were on Hijet as a standard thing with standard springs. So you'd be fine. You'd be absolutely fine. This is perfect anyway for what we want. That's perfect.